Hi there, Richard Filmer here, and welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. So yes, the hair is gone. I decided that the crazed caveman look had run its course, and also here in Cape Town, come summertime, it gets pretty hot, and there's nothing worse than long hair in the heat. So off it came. But let's move on to things a little bit more interesting than my hair. Another great debut album today from the American band Chicago, and their debut album called Chicago Transit Authority, which was the name that they first had, and then they shortened it to Chicago. And this was a band that incorporated all sorts of genres in their music. They had a bit of prog, there was quite a bit of jazz, obviously with the brass element to their sound, which was the big part of their sound, the saxophone, the trombone, and the trumpet. Definitely rock with a great Terry Kath on guitar, one of the most underrated guitarists around. I mean, this guy was an absolute genius. He was rated by Jimi Hendrix, which is not bad. If he's going to rate you as a top guitarist. And yeah, they went on to huge things in the 80s and beyond. Still going today, I think, in one form or another. Members have come and gone, obviously. Unfortunately, Terry Kath passed away by his own hand with a firearm mishap. But yeah, just a great band. Great songs, lots of melody. As I said, they had huge hits in the 80s. They changed quite a bit, though. They became more of a commercial sort of pop band, lots of top 20 hits, But for me, the first, I would say 6, 7, maybe 8 albums, obviously including the debut, are for me the strongest sound for Chicago, where they were adventurous, incorporated all these different genres in their sound, lengthy jams on stage, just a great band. So where did it all start? 1969 was the first album, recorded at Columbia Recording Studios in New York and released on April the 28th, 1969. Such a great year for rock. I mean, there were Led Zeppelin was happening, Yes was happening, Black Sabbath was happening. All these bands were starting out. So this album was actually nominated for a Grammy in 1969, which is not too shabby if this is your first album. And the other thing that was quite amazing, which took some balls, I think, to do, was that they released a double album as their first album. And on the fourth side of the vinyl, there's actually 3 live tracks from the year before, from 68. So as your debut album, you're releasing a double, and part of it is live. It just shows you how confident they were within themselves. And these guys were super sharp musos, really tight band, blessed with amazing musicians. I mean, Peter Cetera, who would go on to become a massive solo artist, was an incredible bass player. Besides having a really great high register vocal range, which him and Terry Kath and the other guys in the band sort of harmonized with, great bass player. So yeah, it was nominated for a Grammy in 69 for Best New Artist of the Year. And the album stayed on the Billboard charts and the Billboard Top 200 for 171 weeks. That's pretty good. I think you're on the right track when your first album does that. And it's been certified double platinum since its release, which is, I think, 10 million sales plus, something like that. There is a more recent reissue, was in 2019 with Rhino Records, and that was a 50th anniversary edition, a double CD and a double vinyl. I'm not quite sure what that means because it was a double vinyl to begin with, unless they've just added some extra tracks, which is probably what it is. So let's have a look at the album, but before we get there, let's mention who's in the band. Very important. As I mentioned, Peter Cetera, there's their bass, backing vocals, and lead vocals. And his vocals and Terry Kath's, and plus Robert Lamb on keyboards, their harmonizing was great within this band. Then you had Terry Kath on guitar, backing, and lead vocals. Amazing guitarist. Excuse me, still early. There's actually a really great DVD called The Terry Kath Story. If you can get hold of that, it gives you his whole life story right up until he died. It's done by his daughter, very nicely done by her, and lots of interviews with ex-members of Chicago. Anyway, let's carry on with the band. Then there's Robert Lamb on keyboards, lead and backing vocals. Lee Loughnane, I think is how you say his name, on trumpet. James Pankow on trombone, cowbell. And Walter Parazada on sax, tambourine. And Danny Seraphine on drums and percussion. Excellent drummer, lots of fills. Also plays really in the pocket. He would leave the band later on. There was a bit of a contention with him within the band, but a great drummer. I mean, if you listen to this album, there's lots of those little fills, keeps it interesting, especially in the longer tracks, of which there are quite a few on the album. So let's have a look at what the album looks like. This is a vinyl, which I picked up at one of our many vinyl fairs that I go to here in Cape Town. And I was really chuffed to get this, because this is an original import. I mean, this is a second-hand, obviously, but this is an import copy. So that's the, and then you get a better idea, Chicago Transit Authority. And on the inside, you have a cool few photographs of the band. Danny Seraphine over there. There's Terry Kath. And that's Peter Cetera over there. And on the right-hand side is Robert Lamb on keyboards and lead vocals. He did a lot of the songwriting in the early part of Chicago's career. So what are the songs on here? I actually listened to this again last night, and it just blew me away. Such an amazing album. And if you think this is your first album and you're so sharp, you can only go one up from this. I mean, this was just amazing. Introduction, which was 6 minutes and 35 seconds, and that's a great introduction to the band and to the album. Lots of time changes, some great brass work as well. And I was never a lover of brass and rock to begin with. I was a total metalhead, but of course, as you get older, your tastes change. And this band is probably right up there with Chase, Keith Hartley, Earth, Wind and Fire, and those kind of bands with the brass thing. So then we move into the second track. Does anybody really know what time it is? And there were a few hits off this first album, and that was probably the biggest one. I think that was written by Robert Lamb, and that comes in at 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And then 7 minutes and 58, the next track, Beginnings. Also a hit off this album. Once again, different parts to the song. Some amazing bass work from Peter Cetera. And the guitar work on this album is just mind-blowing. You know, if you listen to Terry Kath, for me, straight away I'm hearing Jimi Hendrix. Just in the tone. I think he played a Telecaster mostly. And there was in the documentary I mentioned, his daughter was actually there on a quest to find his original Telecaster with the little circles on the Telecaster. He'd sort of customized it himself. And they'd lost this guitar for many years. And eventually they do find it at the end of the documentary. Really interesting. Side 2 of the first vinyl is Questions 67 and 68. That was also a big hit off here. Listen is the next track, and then Poem 58. And that's another 8 minutes long. So these are really long tracks. 6, 7, I think the shortest track is about 3 minutes. And 8 minutes for Poem. Then we move into the side which I really enjoy of this album. Free Form Guitar on side 3. That was Terry Kath's showcase. Apparently there were no special effects used, it's just him. He plugged in his guitar, a fuzz box, a wah-wah, and he just let rip. It's kind of otherworldly, this guitar. It's to me, that is just pure Hendrix. It's like listening to one of Hendrix's albums. Screaming guitar, lots of searing lead breaks. It's just an instrumental, amazing stuff. And then a great track called South California Purples, one of my favorite on the album as well, with a refrain, repeated sort of riff to the, not really guitar bass, but more the brass work, and some great Hammond organ work as well from Robert Lamb. And then I'm a Man, the Spencer Davis track. And let me tell you, if you think Spencer Davis's version is great, yeah, you must hear this version. It cooks. It's just full of groove. That's another thing about this band. Live, they were amazing as well. I've seen a few of their videos on YouTube. There are a couple of DVDs available as well. And they could really cook. And Terry Kath on the guitar with this track, I'm a Man. And in the middle of the track, they slow it down, and there's quite a bit of percussive work from Danny Serafine, the drummer. That's him over there. With lots of fills and things, really makes the song interesting, stretches it out. It's a lot longer than the Spencer Davis version. And then we get to the live part of the album, which was recorded in 1968, August the 29th, Prologue, Someday, and Liberation. It's kind of during the era of the protest songs, Vietnam was happening and that kind of thing. And this was pretty much about that. A lot of audience participation. And it's really great to hear them live back then. And they were pretty cooking as well. So that's it. Chicago Transit Authority. If you want to get an introduction to brass rock and that kind of rock, this is a great place to start. And as I said, the next 6 or 7 albums, all the ones with Terry Kath, for me personally, that's just my opinion, you guys might differ, those are the ones to get hold of. There's some great live albums after this. And funny enough, they never really had names for the albums, so it was pretty much Chicago 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. I think right up until today. And there might be a few which did have names. In the 80s, they changed a lot. David Foster was involved in the songwriting with Peter Cetera, and Peter Cetera kind of took the band over. Became very commercial, lots of ballads. Didn't really work for me. I mean, they made a lot of money and they were huge, but I really enjoy this early stuff with the jazz and the rock and a bit of prog even thrown in. Lots of time changes. Interesting stuff. That's the kind of music that gets my juices flowing. So if you haven't got this album yet, I urge you to get hold of it. It's a brilliant album, especially if you can find the vinyl version, a decent copy of this. The sound quality is just amazing. And also you get the nice deluxe. I must actually try and get the deluxe version and see what the extra tracks are as well. So there we go. Chicago Transit Authority. Next time, I'm going to have a look at another great debut album, another game changer. And when this guy came on the scene, he blew many people's minds. So we're going to have a look at Jimi Hendrix's first album, Are You Experienced? Absolute classic. Have a great week, guys. Look after yourselves. If you haven't done so yet, please down below, subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.